Seems like every day we see the name Atari put on something new. Another way to play all these classic games. It's been about 50 years. You'd think we would have found the perfect way to play all these games by now. But we keep on looking for different ways. And today, we're going to check out another one. Hey everybody, it's Chris from Family Geekery. Today we're going to be taking a look at the My Arcade Atari Retro Video Game System featuring 200 plus video games. This is the latest in what seems to be an ongoing effort to figure out the best way to play these games. I've done several reviews, even in just this year on the channel, of different ways of playing Atari games, different handheld products, different plug into your TV products like this, computer products. They're just spitting these things out left and right, and we keep on buying them, so I guess they're going to keep on making more. But let's take a look at what this thing is here. It says 200 plus games. We see the systems down here: Atari 2600, 5200, 7800, and then arcade. So it seems like a very similar concept to what the Atari VCS offered, and the Atari 50 game that is available on all different consoles right now. But this is obviously a standalone, plug it in, comes with a couple of controllers type thing. So let's check out something else here. It says 2 wireless joysticks with paddle controls. So you can see on here that's got a knob that's going to work as the paddle. So that's kind of interesting. Instead of having two different things or having the stick up here twist, we've got our own dedicated little knob. So I'm interested to see how that works for games like Breakout and Pong. It says it's got game save option and it's HDMI. Let's check out the back here. In the back we got a list of some of the games that are going to be on here. Should be no real surprise. All the same games that we've seen before on these, between the Atari flashback systems and, like I said, the Atari 50 and even the VCS. A lot of the same games. And let's see what else we've got down here. On features, 200 plus video games. Console connects with HDMI. 2.4 gigahertz wireless joysticks with built-in paddles. Game save options, and dynamic RGB lights. Nice. And look, it looks like they're having some fun here. They're definitely playing probably Pong or something because they got their hands on the little the knob here. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what it's like. So I just wanted to show you what we get greeted by when we open the lid here. And I'm just going to take a second to just say that presentation, it matters, right? Spend a couple extra cents or dollars, whatever it costs this company, the My Arcade company in this case, to put something decent together instead of just throwing it in there with some ugly brown, cardboard type stuff in there. This is a pretty nice presentation. We're greeted with a little box here. I'm sure it's got some cables in it. We've got our two controllers. Here's the main system here and some more cables under there. So let's see what's in this box real quick. Alright, the box actually has the book in it. So this is called the Gamestation Pro, the Atari Gamestation Pro. Here's all of our instructions in about 10 different languages probably. And here's probably a quick start guide. Oh, it's an advertisement for all the different My Arcade things. So you've seen these at Target, you've seen them on Amazon, different ways of playing these classic arcade games. But let's go ahead and get all this out of the package and take a closer look at it. Alright, so here's what we got here, minus the cables of course. Got the main system itself and two controllers. Let's go ahead and take a look at the system. And the first thing that really surprised me is how solid this thing feels. Like it's got some weight to it, which may be a metal plate inside here, just like the original 2600. It was pretty hollow, but they put a metal plate in just to give it some weight. So that may be the case, but it feels pretty darn solid. So we got a couple buttons up top here. We got the power button. And we got, looks like a home button. Got the My Arcade logo up here and a couple USB-C connectors up here. Maybe for additional controllers. And then on the back, we've got the USB-C input for 5 volts and an HDMI output. So very simple hookup here. Just HDMI and power. And of course, these are going to be wireless. And then we'll see what these are for. Maybe we can use some different types of controllers. Similar to the Pac-Man collection box that I just tested last week. You can check that out on the channel. So let's take a look at these controllers. And the controllers feel a lot lighter. Now it looks like we're going to have to put some batteries in here, so we'll go grab some batteries in a second. But this is a little bit taller than what I thought it was going to be. So we've got the B button up top here, we have a trigger button, and we got the A button. Although it's nice that the labels are on there, because when you go into the menus and stuff, it says, you know, press A for this and B for this. It just looks a little out of place. If you compare this with the controller that came with the VCS, you see that there's no labels on any of the buttons, at least these two. We've got like a back button and a menu button here. But a lot of times that I was playing the VCS, I wasn't exactly sure which button I was supposed to be pushing for different things. So it is nice to have that label. And then let's just look at the size comparison between these two. Similar size base, but this thing stands a good 1.5 inches, 2 inches taller than this. And then the other difference, of course, is going to be the paddle. This is a neat concept, but it just feels a little loose and cheapy. It works fine, but it just feels a little cheap, I guess is the best way I could say it. Very sloppy, I guess that's a better word for it. And on this guy here, this feels like a precision volume knob, I guess. It's definitely a different style of spinner, because this thing will just keep on going. And this is more like a paddle, where it goes probably about 270 degrees and then stops. So that's a lot more similar to the paddle. Now remember, on the Ataris they had a paddle for doing like the tennis type games, and then they had a spinner for doing like the driving type games. So this one is more like the spinner, and this is more like a paddle. So can't play any Tempest with this, but we'll definitely play some Pong with it, and maybe it'll be a little bit more precise than this thing. Looks like we got some more buttons up here. They say home, select, and start. So it's nice that they're well labeled. On the back here, we've got a USB-C 5 volts in, which is interesting. I'm assuming that's if you use rechargeable batteries. And then we've got the power switch on the left here, a menu button, and then looks like a wireless indicator to show that you're syncing and or sunk to the base unit. So let's grab some batteries and power these things up, and maybe hook this up to a TV. Alright, before we power this thing up, I did look at the instruction book and learned a couple things. I wanted to share those with you. The first thing I noticed was they labeled something that we overlooked here, and that is a micro SD card slot. So it says this is for your game saves. It instructs you to take a micro SD card, stick it in your computer, format it to FAT32, create a folder named States, and then plug it in here. Now if you know anything about emulation, you know that a state is a save state, which means that within the game you can push some button or something in a menu, and it will just capture exactly where you're at in that game. Something that obviously didn't exist back in the days of the Atari 2600. If you wanted to pause your game, you just walked away from it and hoped that nothing happened. So that's a nice thing. I'm a little disturbed by the fact that they have you format a card, create, to FAT32, create a folder, stick it in here. It would have cost them just a couple bucks more just to have a cheap one built in here already set up, or some memory on board that had the save states in there. But I understand every dollar matters, so they put that on us to put a SD card in there. Like I said, a couple bucks, you can get a 32 gig or so and go ahead and do that. But that also lends itself to the potential of putting other things on here that aren't supposed to be on there, so we may have to investigate that also. The other thing I noticed was in the instruction manual, and I'll open up to the very beginning here to show you, everywhere they instruct you to plug something in, they use the word gently, but only when it's plugging it into one of these devices. So you have to gently plug the HDMI cord in here, but you can jam it in as hard as you want into your TV, and then gently plug the cable into here, the USB-C cable into here, and then gently plug it into here. So I did confirm that yes, you can use this wirelessly with the 4 batteries. It uses 4 AA's in here, or you can just have a USB-C to USB-C cable coming straight from the console to here, and then you don't have to worry about batteries. But the batteries do give it a nice little heaviness to it that makes it feel a little bit more solid. So I'm happy to test that out wirelessly. And then the other thing worth noting is they do give you a USB-C cable. That's USB-C on this side, USB-A on the other side. You have to come up with your own power brick, and it has to be 5 volts, 2 amps. Everybody's got those these days, so that's not a huge problem, but it is just another way that these people are shaving a couple more bucks off of their product to help out their profits, I guess. So let's go ahead and get this thing powered up, turned on, and see what it looks like. Alright, so I gently plugged my 2 cables into the box here and gave them power. Another thing worth noting is the first USB source I tried was just a USB power delivery, and that did not work. So I went to just a straight old 5 volts, and of course that worked. So that, of course, isn't a problem if you're using the USB-C to USB-A. I just happen to have a USB-C cable already run up here, and I use that. So just make sure if you are using your own USB-C to USB-C cable that you're plugging into a 5 volt source and not like a power delivery. So we got that hooked up. We got it hooked up to a monitor here, and let's go ahead and turn on this guy. So nice little RGB lights here. We got some RGB lights on the front of this guy, so it looks nice. And let's see if we're working. There we go. So we got featured games, bonus games, and then settings. Let's go ahead and take a look at featured games. And here's all the ones we expect. So I'm not going to play all these, obviously, but I will pick a couple just to test out the joystick. Let's go ahead and pick Adventure. We all know Adventure. If you've had a 2600 or had a friend that had a 2600, you know what this is all about. And it looks like the select button here is changing our game type. And then we can start. So like I said, very familiar. If you know how this works, you know exactly what it is that you're doing. And I can tell you that the controller, it feels good. It's got a good, I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels good. It feels better than the Atari 2600 that we grew up with, that controller. So kill the dragon, grab the key, and we know how this works. So this is probably one of the better feeling controls that I've used for some of these games. Even the Atari VCS, the classic controller that comes with it, that costs a real pretty penny if you buy it separate from the Atari VCS. This definitely feels pretty good. So let's get out of this. Let's see if we hit start, just starts it over. Select, goes back through this again. So I guess home is what we hit. Alright, so we got a good joystick game. Let's go ahead and find a game for the paddle, and I think Breakout would be a good option for that. Alright, so now we're using the paddle down here, and it feels good also. Now I remember using the other one, and the thing was kind of jerking around like this when I was using the VCS controller when I tested out the VCS. And this just seems very smooth, but I guess the proof's going to be in the pudding as soon as I try to start this thing off. Maybe I hit start. And yep, this is playable. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm good at it, but I'm able to control it. I didn't get this far playing with that other controller, so this is actually pretty good. So let's go ahead and find a different game. Alright, let's see what we got here for an arcade game called Crystal Castles. Now, if you're familiar with Crystal Castles, very popular arcade game, very famous for having a trackball. So let's see how this works. It shows the controls are going to be just the joystick. And I guess the joystick is just going to do the four-way controls that you'd normally be doing with a trackball. I've played Centipede several times with a joystick instead of a trackball, and it worked out okay. So let's see how we insert a coin. Start, select, and start. And here we go. So yeah, sure enough, we've got four-way controls with the joystick. Let's see if the paddle does anything. The paddle does nothing. And the button jumps. So yeah, it's playable. It's probably not as fun or as iconic as it was with the trackball, of course, but it's definitely playable. So let's jump out of that game. Let's try one more trackball game. Let's go with Pong. So here's the Atari 26 version of Video Olympics, which I guess includes Pongs, and we can use the select button to go through several different versions of Pong. Not sure which is which, but this looks like hockey. Let's see how many there are. Alright, so about 50 different games. So let's go ahead and play this one here. This reminds me a lot of like a foosball, where you got a goalie and then you got a player. Oh, this is going to be a little bit easier because this is apparently a two-player version of it. But this is neat that it's got the edges on it instead of just having a complete open side. And control-wise, it is quite enjoyable. Pretty easy to control. And it definitely doesn't feel near as sloppy as that other controller. There is a very precision feel to this this dial here. So that's pretty good. So let's jump out of this game. Let's go ahead and navigate all the way up to... We've got our subcategories up at the top. Here we go. Now I can navigate through there. You had to hit the B button to get back up there. But we got the Atari 2600, the 5200, 7800, arcade, panel games, and then multiplayer, and then recent. So it's actually a nice UI that allows you to get right to the type of games that you want. Let's go ahead and take a look at Atari 7800 and see how something that's a little bit more modern, and I say modern still being 40 years old, but seeing something a little bit more modern, see how it looks on this system. So let's try some Food Fight. Now, I've never played Food Fight on a Atari 7800 before. I have played it at the arcades, and it's a funny but fun game, I guess. I'm gonna grab some food, smack the people with it, and try to get all the way to the ice cream, I think. Yep. Oh, now they're throwing back. And here we go. All the way to the ice cream. So yeah, so lots of fun with that type of game. And I'm sure we get both these controllers going and get some two-player games up on the multiplayer section up here. And this would be a pretty fun thing to have hooked up to your modern TV. Alright, the next thing I wanted to show you is we hit this select button. It says settings. So let's go ahead and do that. And we can change the aspect ratio. So if you want them to stay in the 4:3 ratio and put the black bars on your TV, you can do that. Or if we switch to 16:9, then it'll go ahead and stretch out the games, use the full screen, but they may look a little distorted. Then we've got bezel art. So if you keep it in the 4:3, it looks like you can have some bezel art. Let's go ahead and turn on this CRT TV, and we'll test that out in the game. And then we got scan lines, so you can turn the scan lines on or off. And it says only used if you use 4:3 and a bezel art is turned off. So we've got that turned off now. We'll leave that turned off. Some people like to have the scan lines to make it look more like an old CRT. And some people just like a nice clean image. and then the controller overview. So this is kind of helpful. It shows that this is the C button, and now that it mentions it, I'm looking right at it, and yes, it does say C on there. So I guess some of the games may use a C button, and then it lists out what everything else is. And then looks like this button back here, the menu button is what would have brought up our save states. So we'll test that out again real quick. And then more information, you can scan the QR code. So let's go ahead and back out of this. We'll go back into one of these games real quick. Let's go into a 2600 game. And let's load up some Yard's Revenge. And we'll go ahead and test out what that bezel art looks like. And then we'll test out the save functionality also. So that looks pretty darn cool. You guys may not have grown up with a TV that looked like this, but I sure did. And even though it's a very nice, crisp graphic, it still gives you kind of the nostalgia feel to it. So let's go ahead and start up this game. And here we are. Great classic game. Let's hit this button here. And that's nice. So it gives you some options here to change the difficulty. It looks like in some games we'll be able to change the paddle sensitivity, change the TV type, and then we've got, looks like several save states here. And it looks like maybe there is internal slots. It says slot 1 and 2, and then slot 3 and 4 say SD card. So maybe there is some option to save something in here. Let's go ahead and see. I don't have an SD card in there. So let's save that to state A. Let's go ahead and bring that back. And sure enough, there it is. So we can load that same state back. And I was right back down where I started. So that's pretty darn cool. So the next thing I want to do is go back to this main menu here and see what we got under bonus games. So we've got all 8-bit, 16-bit, arcade, multiplayer, and then recent. So let's go ahead and check this out. Let's go ahead and go through the subcategories here of 8-bit. And looking at these games, this is not Atari games. So these 8-bit games look like something that might have been on like an NES type system. Bad Street Brawler. Yeah, I can't say that I've ever played this game before, but graphics wise it sure does look like something that would have been in an NES type system. Let's go check out what the 16-bit games look like. So here's a list of just a couple 16-bit games. Let's go ahead and try out this Sword of Sodan. Definitely better graphics. Copyright 1990. So another game I'm not too familiar with. Let's go ahead and play a couple seconds of it, see what it looks like. Wow. Just wow. So we got the A button, the B button. So now we are using the C button for this. So this would definitely be easier to play with like a joypad than it is with this joystick. But it's playable. You gotta remember this is the bonus games. So although they do make up for the big number 200 on the front of that box, they're still not the reason you're buying this machine. Now if it had like Sega Genesis type games that we all know and recognize, that would be a lot better, but of course that would require licensing, and it wouldn't be as cheap as it is now. So bonus, I guess, is the big word to take away from those games. I don't even know what arcade games. Diver Boy, Fancy World, Mighty Warriors. So probably not a whole lot to try out in here, but it's bonus. So the last option on the front main screen here was the settings, and yep, that's the same settings that was in the other menu, so that's good. So I think we've seen enough of what it comes with. Let's see if there's something else we can do with this SD card slot. Alright, so even as I was recording this video, there's a lot of cool stuff that I just discovered. And if you made it this far in the video, congratulations. This is where things are going to get really cool. So first things first, I'm going to show you, I've got an Xbox controller hooked up USB-C to USB-C right to the front here, and it just works. It just works perfect. So if you have an Xbox controller, that's going to be probably the preferred one to use. And why would you want to use an Xbox controller? Well, I'm about to show you why. So the second thing I want to tell you about is if we go into settings here and we go down to about, we can see firmware version. And this is different than it was earlier in the video. That's because they just put out an update. So if you go search for, just search for Atari Gamestation Pro firmware, I'll put a link down in the description below. They've got instructions on how to do that. They've got a video that is perfect, shows you exactly what to do. It's pretty easy. Install a computer program, download some firmware. You got to hook up your console to your computer with the USB-C cable, and then step by step it tells you what to do. Now you are going to need a USB-C cable that carries data. I believe the one that came with it is just power only, so you'll want to make sure you have a data capable USB-C cable because you're going to be hooking it up to your computer over that. You're also going to need a small little device to hit the reset pin in the back, and you can either use a SIM card extractor or a paper clip, or if you've bought one of these trusty Storito kits off of Amazon that I talk about all the time, then you'll see that there is a SIM card drive bit in there. And I just grabbed this. I used it by just holding it with my fingers. It was a lot easier than using a SIM card extractor, and it was good to go. So go do that firmware update because it's going to unlock some things. One thing that it changes is how you navigate these menus here. I didn't mention it before, but it was a little frustrating getting from this top row here down to this area. And now it's just easy. You can go right or left. You go down into here. Instead of going down, 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 now you're going right, 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 right. And then you can get right back up here without having to hit B. Before you had to hit the B button and go up a couple levels and then get up there. It was just kind of frustrating. So navigation's a little bit better, so that's good to go. And then the other thing the firmware setting changed was how we get to utilize this SD card here on the side. So the same YouTuber who has the video for updating the firmware, that's actually linked on MyArcade's website. His name is Gen X Grownup. He's got a video on how to get games on here. Now originally they were a little bit more in depth on having to rename games and stuff like that. Now it's a lot easier because they have folder support, and I'll show you that in just a second. But what I will mention to you is if you've seen my recent video on this guy, this Pac-Man collection HDMI thing that I got for like 19 bucks on Amazon. And in that video I showed you how to prepare a micro SD card to put a bunch of games on here. Well, the good news is you can use the same exact card. The only difference is on this guy we had to name the folder Game, G-A-M-E, and on this guy it has to be Games. So all I simply did was rename it, added the S to the folder, and it just worked. So to get to those games, before you'd have to power it down, power it up, it'll come up with a screen that asks you if you want to do internal or external, and that's still going to show up on here. It's going to ask you that question if you have a card in there. But the difference is you don't have to reboot to switch back and forth. Now if we just do a simple tap of start and select at the same time, it goes to the SD card, and if we're already in there, we can go right back. So let's go ahead back into SD card, and you can see I've got now folders for all my different systems. So let's go ahead and just burn through these real quick and see that they work. NES, let's try Mega Man. And there we go. Now you can see why we may want a better controller. So that works. Let's go back. B for back. Go into Genesis. Let's check out some Sonic. And there we go. Running Sonic on an Atari. Gotta love it. Let's go back up to the menu. Let's go into SNES and try some Super Mario World. Beautiful. Let's get out of there. And probably the most important, let's go into Atari 2600, since this is the ideal device to play these Atari 2600 games on, but maybe the 200 games that comes included on there is missing one of your favorites, and you can't go wrong with some good old Activision games like Pitfall. And now let's see if I unplug my gamepad here and take over with this stick. And now we can play some Atari 2600 goodness with a really decent joystick. So pretty awesome. Alright, so let's summarize this all up because we've come a long way in this video. I did a quick review on the unit itself. The console itself feels solid. The controller I really like. The initial, what it comes with for, let's say, $99. You can grab that on Amazon. Sometimes it goes on sale down to $89. How it sits, I think it's a pretty decent deal. You get 2 joysticks, you get the console, you get to play a bunch of games, 200 games. Probably the Atari ones are the ones worth playing. And the bonus ones, I didn't see a whole lot there, but like I said, it is a bonus. But besides that, adding the functionality of going into something like this is just amazing. To have all of that on a small little thing that you plug right into your TV. You don't have to worry about using a PC or a Raspberry Pi or hacking anything. You just throw some stuff on an SD card, stick it in there, and it just works. So now if you look at the value proposition of a $99 device, that allows you to play more than just Atari games. And the 8-bit and 16-bit games that it's capable of, your choices can be just about endless. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. I'll have some links down below for all the different guides and all the different products that I used to get to where we are now. How to set up the firmware, how to load the games on the SD card. I'll give you some links to some SD cards and some USB cables that will help you with this process. But I hope you did get something out of this video. If you did, I appreciate a thumbs up. That helps out the channel. If you want to see more stuff like this, I've got all kinds of retro gaming stuff and all kinds of geekery on the YouTube channel, so go ahead and check out the rest of the channel and subscribe if you see something you like. That brings us to the end of this one. I really thank you for watching as always, and until next time, peace out and geek out.